we mentioned in a previous episode when we were talking about the city of Krakow, that Krakow was spared destruction in 1939. However, Warsaw, as usual, I would almost say, suffered a different fate. The first German tanks appear on the outskirts of the city on September 9th, so after 9 days of the September campaign. They tried to enter but are quickly beaten back. They surround the city 11 days later on the 20th of September. And the Germans start aerial bombardment. Warsaw suffers a lot of damage from artillery shelling as well, but also the Germans and Adolf Hitler are very keen to see how much damage the Luftwaffe can do. So, for example, the Royal Castle goes up in flames after being hit by a German bomb in 1939. In general, more than 10% of all the buildings of the city suffer either catastrophic damage or substantial damage. So naturally, another 80% almost would be razed to the ground by the Germans in the Warsaw Uprising, or rather in the wake of the Warsaw Uprising, when the Germans were going house to house trying to destroy the city. But it is worth remembering that even in September 1939, the city suffers a lot of damage.
That's right.
And in the coming years, the Poles who do live in Warsaw, they are constantly reminded by these ruins that are not everywhere, but from place to place you would see the damages of 1939. Warsaw is also treated differently than Krakow. Krakow being made the capital city, so to say, of this General Gouvernement, this part of Poland that isn't directly annexed into the Third Reich. And Dr. Hans Frank, the head of this administration, he stays in Krakow, which he deems to be a nicer and more German city. Warsaw, from the outset, is supposed to be a small provincial German city. The long-term plans are to deport many of the Poles, having others succumb to diseases and, in many cases, even famine. So this plan for Warsaw, the so-called Pabst plan, is to decrease the population by well over 70%, down to 150,000 people or so. Naturally, all institutions of higher learning are closed immediately. The Poles are to be schooled up until 4th grade, and only to be learned basic reading and writing and basic math in order to be able to work for the German defense industry and in general to aid their war effort, but nothing else than that. So naturally all the theaters, galleries, all institutions of art are also closed. So the way that the Germans treat Warsaw is very grim. Naturally, in 1944, the Poles, they have their revenge, a very costly revenge for the Poles themselves as well. But nevertheless, after 5 years of occupation, or nearly 5 years of occupation, the Poles rise up, and Warsaw is again the focal point of the entire Polish resistance against Nazi Germany. As I mentioned previously, the city ends up completely devastated as a result. First 2 months of intense fighting in typical urban combat from house to house, with the Germans again using a lot of artillery and aerial bombing. But once Warsaw surrenders, the Germans, Adolf Hitler, had been thrown into a flurry of rage when he found out that the Poles had launched the uprising with the Red Army on the outskirts of Warsaw. So he decided that he would make an example out of Warsaw, and instead of spending those precious resources that he still had on the fight against the Red Army, he decided to have thousands and thousands of Germans to be completely focused on either robbing Warsaw of all valuables that they had, than simply having people going house to house and setting them on fire, or even using dynamite to blow the buildings up. So Warsaw really is a completely devastated city after the war, on a scale that only really Stalingrad, Hiroshima can be compared with.
Adam, as usual, the clock in the corner of the room is showing that we've run out of time, but we'll pick it up next time, so thank you. There we are. I've had to interrupt Adam almost in mid-sentence, but fear not. If you join us next time, as we hope you will, we'll pick up the story and continue our examination of the history and modern development of Warsaw. Thank you for watching.